Welcome back everybody to the channel. So today, the first official images for War of the Rohirrim, which is an animated Lord of the Rings series, were officially released. And there has been, I don't want to say controversy, I don't want to say backlash, but there's been some criticism and sort of some tentativeness from people in regards to the way it looks. So you're looking at the image right now, obviously. I don't think people, when they heard War of the Rohirrim is an anime, I don't think they were thinking this. As people pointed out, this looks kind of like a 90s anime, right? And so I've seen a lot of people who are like, if you didn't tell me this was Lord of the Rings, I wouldn't know, right? And this feels very different from the Peter Jackson films, right? And what I wanted to do was look at this and kind of talk about the origin, because I think what ended up happening with Peter Jackson's films is that he took an element of Lord of the Rings and sort of ran with it, and then that visual language and look has been associated with the franchise, the franchise feels weird calling it that, but that is what it is. That look has been associated with the franchise since those movies came out, and I don't know if that's completely accurate to the actual style that Tolkien envisioned. And so I want to kind of talk about that. Now, I am not a Tolkien scholar. I'm not even a huge Lord of the Rings guy. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, but I'm not one of those people who knows. Like, I haven't read the Silmarillion. I don't know as much as most guys, so I am gonna try to keep it real with you. Maybe I'm probably not the best person to talk about this, but I feel I didn't see a lot of people talking about this, and so I wanted to throw my 2 cents in. So the thing about this is it looks cartoony, right? And I think that's why people are sort of taken aback by it, sort of pulled out by it, because it doesn't look like what you associate Lord of the Rings with, because when most people think of Lord of the Rings, they think of Peter Jackson's movies, and those are very gritty, realistic. I mean, he said in interviews the whole visual design of the project was that he wanted it to feel like a documentary, right? And so it's very gritty, everything feels real, it feels like medieval fantasy, like it feels realistic, right? And the thing is that is obviously completely different from this. This feels very high fantasy. Somebody said it looks like Castlevania, which I completely agree with. Or like, he looks like Belmont, or looks like Jon Snow. Yeah, this is a stark contrast to the Peter Jackson films. The thing is, this is actually more on par, arguably, with Tolkien's vision of the artistic style of Lord of the Rings, and also the previous media that came before Peter Jackson's movies, which also influenced Peter Jackson. So I wanted to look at that. So here is an example of one of the films that was created. Now this was, I think this is just called The Lord of the Rings. And this was an interesting project because it came out before the Peter Jackson films, I'm not sure when. This movie was a combination of hand-drawn animation and actually rotoscoping. So they rotoscoped over, if you don't know what rotoscoping is, it's where you take video and you draw over it. And so what it did is it created this very unique, these are orcs from that movie, created a very unique visual style. And the thing about this is arguably more in tune to what Tolkien originally envisioned in his drawings and in the artwork that was promoted with the books. But this is far more in line with this imagery. Now this looks more polished, but you see kind of how these are actually more in line than you would think, right? Now, but if you go even further, there's even more. This is The Hobbit, the animated Hobbit. I'm not sure if it came before or after the animated Lord of the Rings. I'll have to look that up and put the dates in there. But you can see, once again, this is far more cartoony and whimsical than the Peter Jackson movies, right? Completely different. And this is preceding the Peter Jackson movies, right? Or you can even look at Tolkien's original art. You can see where the original animated films got their inspiration from, because this is far more in line with Tolkien's own artwork, right? And these are not the greatest images to promote, but you can see how when Tolkien was writing this, it was meant to be a mythology for England almost. And it was, especially The Hobbit, which this image is from The Hobbit, it has more of a whimsical aesthetic that Peter Jackson did not capture at all. He very much took the high fantasy and ran with that. And I think it turned out great, but I think that it's created a false identity of the visual language of Lord of the Rings and what it's supposed to look like. And so that's why this image seems really jarring. But in reality, if you look at the origins of Lord of the Rings media in terms of drawings, official artwork that's been done, and the original movies that came out, which there were three. There was The Hobbit, which is this. Then they did, I don't know if this is in order or not. There was also The Lord of the Rings, which was a mishmash of the Fellowship and the Two Towers, part of the Two Towers. And then they went and did the Return of the King in this art style, which also had some of the Two Towers in it. It was kind of a weird. It's weird. They're not very chronological. My point is that the origin of Lord of the Rings and its original artistic style is a lot more in line with this than I think people realize. And so people seem to think that this is not accurate to Lord of the Rings and its design, but it actually is. And unfortunately, Peter Jackson, amazing films, but he did kind of push the art style of Lord of the Rings towards like modern action when it's more meant to be whimsical, really. And this a return to form? I think it's a hybrid. It feels like a hybrid. I mean, obviously we have three images. Who knows what the final product will look like? But this feels like a hybrid between Peter Jackson's more realistic action style and the original movie's more whimsical, cartoony style. And I think that it's really cool. It's cool to see a new style come to Lord of the Rings because I feel like we've been stuck in the Peter Jackson interpretation for so long. I mean, every piece of media that's come out has imitated Peter Jackson's design. All the video games, all of the art, all of the merch, it's all mostly imitated Peter Jackson's visual design. And that's not necessarily representative of how Tolkien intended it to be. And so it's cool to see. Is this representative of that? I don't know. I think it's more in line. I do think they're obviously taking a lot of creative liberties here. And I do have to agree that it doesn't scream Lord of the Rings. Right? Like, if you show me that, I would not immediately go, oh, that's Lord of the Rings. It honestly, it looks like Jon Snow on the wall. This middle picture here, it looks like Jon Snow on the wall. That is what it looks like. But we'll see how it turns out. I think that just the fact that we're getting media that is straying from the form and trying something new, I think that in of itself is worthwhile because I don't know. I just feel like the Lord of the Rings as a franchise has sort of been in decline in terms of creativity that's brought to it. Because I don't think that Peter Jackson's take should be the definitive take. I think that we should see more approaches, and that's what this is, and I appreciate that. And I'm hopeful because I grew up on these. I did not grow up on the Peter Jackson movies. I didn't watch them until I was older. So these, to me, I associate more with the core of Lord of the Rings, more with the art style. And so the anime, to me, despite what a lot of people are saying, I think it feels right. And we'll see. And I do have qualms about this, obviously, but we'll see how it turns out. I mean, you can see the vast differences in these designs here, and I think that this is going to fit right at home.